There was once a woman named Claire who lived in a quiet town where the days seemed gentle, but her life was anything but gentle. She had a little boy named Liam, who could not walk, who could not speak, who only smiled with eyes that carried a world of dreams and pain together. When doctors told her that her child would never live a normal life, she did not break. She simply held him closer, whispered promises into his soft hair, and said, "As long as I am breathing, you will never be alone," she thought. That was the hardest thing she would ever face. But life had another test waiting. One morning, she felt a sharp pain in her chest, and soon came the words that no mother ever wants to hear: cancer. She sat in her car outside the hospital, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe, while the world outside kept moving, people laughing, cars passing, birds flying. None of them knew that her world had just fallen apart. She looked at the empty car seat beside her, where Liam's small blanket lay folded, and she thought, if I fall, who will hold him? If I give up, who will love him like I do? That night, she didn't sleep. She watched her son dreaming beside her. She touched his face, and in the silence, she made a decision. She would fight. She would fight with everything she had not, because she wanted to live forever, but because he needed her tomorrow. She began her treatments. The pain was unbearable. Her hair began to fall. Her body grew weaker. But every morning she woke up to the sound of Liam's laughter echoing through the house. That laughter became her medicine. When she couldn't stand, she crawled. When she couldn't cook, she whispered stories to him about oceans they would one day see, about stars that would guide him when she was gone. Every smile he gave her was another reason to survive. Sometimes she sat in front of the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back, bald, pale, fragile, but her eyes still had fire in them. She told herself cancer could take her strength, her beauty, her comfort, but it would never take her love. One night, she was so weak she could barely breathe. She thought about giving up, but then she heard Liam in his room trying to speak his first word. The sound was broken, soft, but real. "Mama," he said. "Mama." Her tears fell silently. She dragged herself from the bed to his side and held him close, whispering, "I am here, baby. I will always be here. Even if the stars fade, even if the world forgets our names, I will still be here." From that night, something changed inside her. She stopped being afraid of dying and started living every moment like a prayer. She took him to the park where other kids stared, but she smiled anyway. She sang to him in the rain. She held him during storms. She painted rainbows on the walls of their small kitchen because she wanted him to live in color even when her world was turning gray. The doctors called her a miracle because her cancer stopped spreading. They didn't understand how she was still alive, but she did. "Love," she said softly, "love kept me alive." Years passed, and Liam grew older, still fragile, still unable to speak fully, but his eyes shone brighter than ever. Every birthday she baked him a cake, even when she could no longer taste the sweetness herself. When her hands trembled, she guided his to hold the spoon together. When her body grew too weak to walk, she taught him to paint with colors that spoke the words he couldn't. One morning, she woke up and saw sunlight spilling through the window. She looked at her son sleeping peacefully beside her. She felt tired in a way she had never felt before. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "It's time for me to rest now, but remember, my love, you are not alone." She closed her eyes with a smile, and that was how the world lost Claire, but not really, because in that same house years later, Liam, now a young man, sat in front of a canvas, painting a picture of his mother standing under a tree with her arms open wide, light all around her, and a soft smile that seemed alive. He couldn't speak, but he didn't need to. His art spoke for him, and on the bottom of the painting he wrote the only word he had ever truly known: Mama. Years passed, and the little house that once echoed with the sound of her laughter became a quiet temple of memory. Liam grew into a man with gentle eyes and trembling hands. He still could not walk without help, and his words still came in fragments, but he had learned something his mother once said, that love could be stronger than pain. He believed it with all his heart, and so he began painting her story over and over again, in every color, in every canvas he could find. People started to notice his work. At first it was just neighbors, then a local gallery, then newspapers. They came to see the boy who painted love and loss without ever speaking a word. Each painting told a story of a mother's arms, a boy's smile, a battle with shadows, and a light that never died. Soon his art was everywhere. Hospitals hung his paintings in cancer wards. Mothers wept. Fathers held their children closer. Strangers who had never known Claire began whispering her name. Liam could feel her in every brushstroke. Sometimes he would sit in the park where she once took him. He could almost hear her voice in the wind saying, "Keep going, my boy, the world needs your light." He smiled at the sky and lifted his hand to paint on his small travel canvas a picture of the sun rising over two figures, one strong, one fragile, holding hands. He titled it Tomorrow because that was what his mother had given him the courage to believe in. One evening after an exhibition, a woman approached him, her eyes red from crying. She said, "My daughter has cancer, and I was losing hope, but then I saw your painting and something in me changed." "Thank you." Liam didn't speak. He just took her hand and placed it gently over his heart. She understood everything in that silence. She understood what words could never say. His story began spreading across the country. News anchors called him the silent artist of love. Doctors told their patients about him. Mothers wrote letters to him saying his paintings gave them strength to keep fighting. And every time he felt overwhelmed, he would go home and sit before the small photo of his mother framed beside his bed. He would trace the edges of her smile and whisper, "Thank you for not giving up on me." One winter morning, a gallery in New York invited him for a major exhibition titled The Light She Left Behind. It was dedicated entirely to his mother's memory. Dozens of paintings filled the walls, each one glowing softly under the lights, and in the center of the room hung his masterpiece, As she lived, and in every story, she told every life, she touched every book, she published every step she walked, she carried his memory and the promise she had made, and she knew that love once truly given never fades, and promises made in love are never broken, and she was living proof of both.